Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Wejo and Moonshadow. This webinar has been set up for our Data Insights pre-partner launch exclusive. So some of you guys on the call now are some of our exclusive partners that we're revealing this new partnership between ourselves, Wejo, and some colleagues that we have on the line from Moonshadow. So first of all, a little introduction to some of the people that you'll be speaking to today on this call. Firstly, we have Matt McCann, our business development manager at Wejo. That's from Matt. And then we also have Aymar Bougies from Moonshadow, CEO at Moonshadow. And we'll introduce those as we go through this presentation. So Wejo as a company, our story being that we were founded in 2014. We're moving towards around 17 million vehicles being available on the platform. Currently, we have around 9.3 million vehicles available for our egress partners, but we'll be moving towards the end of the year, aiming for that kind of figure to go live with. What that means in terms of data for feeds and speeds is we have seen around 4 trillion data points captured. 167 billion miles curated, and around 17 billion data points collected daily, both through streaming or batch options. A little bit of a background where we are geography-wise, then in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen that you can see here, we do have our Austin hub, which is part of our commercial hub, and then we've got the remainder of our organisation, as you can probably tell from my accent as well. We're a UK-based company, so good evening from the UK, and 2 locations, Tatton Hall and Manchester, in Cheshire. So we move towards some more of the feeds and speeds as we move towards the right hand side of the screen here, and a little bit of a USP around Wejo of our super low latency, transmitted every 1 to 3 seconds from 95% of the vehicles. That generally gets to 95% of those data points get to our partners in under 32 seconds, but we'll talk more on that in a few slides time. Our data is cleaned, normalized and structured into a common data model. As you can imagine, Wejo's ingesting data from various sources. We do all the heavy lifting in the mid part of that to make sure there is a similar basis for our partners in our egress streams. Anonymized vehicle data, as you can see in the bottom center here, we're seeing around 1 in 28 vehicles across the US geography. To give you some idea of what that looks like then in terms of the overall, you can see some of our penetration rates there of around 10% of California, 13% of Texas, 7 of Michigan, and 7 of Florida. So what those numbers mean, they are percentages of registered vehicles in those states. We're moving towards being a multi-OEM, multi-geography company, so that gives you a little bit of a view of Wejo's vision moving forward. We are currently available, our data is currently available in the US only, but our sites are having a global footprint, and we'll be looking at that, continuing that towards the back end of this year in H2. That's that. Moving on then to introduce Wejo and sort of its USPs in more detail around Wejo's connected vehicle data. So what we've got here is 4 images to represent that really. In the top left-hand corner, we've got a 3-second capture rate with latency of around 30 seconds. This is critical for some of our use cases in terms of getting data quickly from ourselves at Wejo, well, from the vehicle itself, all the way through Wejo to our end partners. And ultimately what we see there is every 3 seconds we get ping from the vehicle, and we can get each of those pings back to our partners with a latency of around 30 seconds on average. What we've got here in the top right hand corner of the screen then is another illustration of Wejo's USP in terms of the volume of data that we have in-house. So we're seeing currently around 1.3 billion journeys tracked on any given month. That's equivalent to around 450 billion data points for around 9.2 million vehicles. The image that you can see there in the green is a visualization of the concentration of each individual data point. When we look at the bottom left-hand side of the screen here, we talk around the accuracy of Wejo's data. So Wejo's data is accurate down to around 3 meters. And that's illustrated quite clearly here in this visualization around these vehicles parked in the car park locations. What's also quite interesting of this is this shows different fuel types. So the colorizations show EV, hybrid and gasoline vehicles. So we can understand a breakdown of vehicle type out of the fleet that we have in that way for various use cases around charging, availability, and those sort of ideas. When we look to the bottom right hand part of the screen here, we've got another USP of Wejo's in terms of what attributes Wejo can provide that can't be collected by any other by outside of connected vehicle data on the market. So essentially, we are compared to mobile data or closed loop data sources. Those data sources cannot provide some interesting insight that Wejo's data can. So from a connected vehicle, you can see harsh braking, harsh acceleration events, such as illustrated in this image here. The harsh braking events being grouped together to see the red dots that you can see, and the harsh acceleration events being the orange dots that you've got there, and the volumes of what we can see in that localized area. For some industries, that's really interesting insight in terms of a historical view of where these trends may be occurring and what mitigation needs to happen to ensure safety on roads.
So really, I suppose the main aim of today's presentation is to make this introduction to from Wejo to Moonshadow. Wejo and Jim there have gone through all the great things that we're doing and the high granularity of our data and showed there in near real-time latency. Moonshadow, if you just move on one, Jim, for me, please. Moonshadow, and they've created a DB4 IoT platform here, which will hopefully help you with some of the potential and the pain points that you've been looking through, and that we've listened to you, and we believe this partnership with Moonshadow will address a number of those pain points, and I know that I'm going to pass over to Imar in a second, and the fantastic work that we've already done together he's going to go over, and I think we'll see the benefits of this partnership and how it could benefit our partners with their use cases and the problems that you're looking to solve. So I suppose over to Imar now as Moonshadow and Wejo and our data partnership.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Jim. Let me see if I can share the screen here. So did that work?
Hang on a second. Something's happening, I think. There we go. Yeah, over to you, Imar.
Thank you. So thanks for the introductions, both Jim and Matthew. We're at Moonshadow. We're really honored to be invited as the first data insight partner of, I'm sure, many more to come in the future. But to be the first one here is a real honor. So a little bit about Moonshadow. We were founded about 10 years ago in Eugene, Oregon. So we're US based. All of our developers are here in the US. And what we set out to do is to create a database engine specifically for data that's coming from connected vehicles or mobile phones. We usually refer to it as time series geospatial data. So we created a database engine that was specific for this purpose. Most database engines, Oracle, many others, are general purpose databases. They want to be everything for everybody. As a result, they're optimized for no one. What we realized at Moonshadow 5-6 years ago is that the data coming off of mobile devices and connected vehicles was going to be so extremely large that the traditional database engines wouldn't work anymore. So our solution is a core database engine written in C, assembler, and C++. So we don't sit on top of an Oracle or a Postgres or a Cassandra. We are the underlying database engine. So we're offering DB4 IoT, which of course stands for the database for the Internet of Things, as a platform as a service. And what this means is that we will preload the Wejo data in DB4 IoT. We will do all the heavy lifting, the data wrangling, and pull it into our server centers. We have several server clusters around the US that we serve the solution from. And then over the last couple of years, we've worked very closely with DKS Associates, a transportation consulting firm in Portland to optimize our technology to make this specific for transportation analytics. So we have added a number of features that I will show you in the rest of the presentation that are specific functions that transportation engineers need. Just a little remark about what we do not do. We are not transportation engineers. We have no PEs on staff. We do not do any consulting. You know, we are purely a data analytics provider, and then it's really up to the consultants and the engineers to decide what that means for their field. So we work very closely with them in providing the information they need, but we do not do that type of work ourselves. So we're not competing with consultants in any way, shape, or form. So now on to the fun stuff. This is our platform. This is a screenshot. What you see here is about 1.5 billion waypoints visualized over the entire US. And it's an interactive platform. So what you can do is you can literally zoom in on any area. We're looking at Portland here. And some of those of you who know the Portland area will recognize, you know, I-5 here. The blue lines are the freeways with higher speeds. The data here is visualized by speed. And you see that blue and green are the higher speeds, yellow are the 50 kilometers an hour, and then red are the slower speeds. So let's get on to the most interesting stuff, why everybody's here today. You know, what can you do with this data in the time of COVID-19? Well, as Jim and Matthew were explaining before, is the Wejo journey data is available in real time. It's extremely detailed, an update every 3 seconds. And that allows us to generate insights that really are not available with any other platform. So you can, for instance, one of the things you can do, which I'll explain further, is you can monitor daily movement changes for any area or location. So this results in a number of interesting use cases. So, and what we'll do here is we'll look at monitor movement changes, we'll compare daily recreation, catchment areas, turning movement estimates, which is a huge challenge right now. And then we picked, for retail, we picked restaurants, and we'll look at visitor analyses, which we think is particularly interesting. Now a lot of areas are reopening. So, well, let's first take a look at the movement changes. So you can define any series of areas yourself and look at the traffic within each area. And so what you can do is, what we can do with db4IoT, with Wejo Journeys, is we can generate reports of movement changes on a daily basis for your area within your specifications. So this means that during the time of COVID-19, where transportation patterns have changed dramatically, and that's probably even an understatement, you can see how those patterns are, you know, renormalizing or going towards a new normal, or how they're being reduced as different rules are given out by authorities, and, you know, different levels of opening the economy back up are instigated. So you can look on a next day basis, you can generate this information and track in detail how movement patterns are changing.
Just to wrap this all together then, really quickly, what we talked around at the beginning around Wejo's data, as you can see displayed once again, sort of bookmarking this session, as it were, around some of the attributes, and Aymar also alluded to some of these, and I think one of the attributes, one of the images that you showed there, Aymar, that really encapsulated that was that restaurant piece, and elements of that use case around sort of, look how granular the data is, look how frequent the data can come, and look at what kind of insights we can derive from use cases, various use cases with that data. And obviously then the power of, overlaid over that would be DB4 IoT. So ultimately, it's the power of DB4 IoT can sort of help realize this to a larger part of our market that perhaps Wejo wasn't able to fulfill before without a platform such as DB4 IoT. So ultimately, a summary is images like this around Wejo's data with both, you can see both our movement and event data in here around the movement being the small dots that Imar described, and the event data being the larger blue and purple dots there as well.